Z.I.P.P.O, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a long time that we wanted to do this, and now finally we're making it.
I decided to leave the house.
Yes, to leave the house in this cold winter day, venture until the HoS sound and to have a conversation. And I wanted to ask you a question. What is one of the first good memories you have with your music or with music in general?
It's interesting because it's a very wide and open question as well, so it can go a bit everywhere. And with me, it's been like the impact and the emotion, of course, that give to me. Although this is not really like the answer I will give to be like straight into something, but I remember like the first time I was exposed to it, because it wasn't that simple. Actually, I didn't really grow up in like musical environment at all. Like nobody in my house literally was into music except my brother. I think played saxophone for some years, but it wasn't really like a very deep like musical environment. So it's connected to sport, I would say. And I used to play basketball, and everybody there was like really into like hip hop at the time, and we would play just like in the courtyard, and everybody would just like bring some mixes, and I was like really into actually doing those. So this is actually what led me to DJing in the future, was literally just like selecting music and making playlists. And I still vividly remember that those years, and I was like, wow, this is something I do like. And just like the idea of hearing different multiple versions of hip hop classics, or like all this like sampling culture, which is obviously things I found out later in the years, technically speaking. But yeah, that was quite magical because I was literally exposed to something new.
Yeah. You're from Rotondo, which is in Puglia, in Italy.
Yeah.
And I know that Rotondo is also famous for jazz. They host like every year like jazz. So there is a music scene, which is definitely not electronic scene so much.
Yeah.
Do you think that inspired you to get closer to music? For example, what you were saying now with the mixes and...
Yeah, absolutely did. I mean, I remember there were one or two main festivals at the time, and every summer they will host like some of the legendary like artists into jazz in a 15,000 people place.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mind-blowing, just the fact that and this will happen for free most of the time. So I remember I saw one of the last Charles Scott Heron concert before he passed away. I saw artists like Robert Glasper playing like several times before even winning Grammys and everything. Erykah Badu played, like Lauryn Hill, Fela Kuti. Like we had a long and huge history on like African music as well as jazz and funk. So that definitely influenced my listening approach for sure, because I will just like try to attend this concert every time, and then throughout the year just like check the calendar of who will come next and try to get into their music. So that was literally an educational like moment for me. And I'm very thankful that happened in my hometown actually. And then later on I managed to also attend, not only as a customer, but also like I managed to play those festivals and share the booth with some like crazy legends. And
And that is in the realm of electronic music. Eventually, when you played there, you were always playing your techno, but also...
I remember I did a lot of like house sets too, because I come from house and disco, of course. But I will also do like more special projects, whether some like audiovisual stuff or in general very eclectic sets. It's definitely not the case of playing like techno music if they book you together with like Theo Parrish or like this sort of artist. So you better dig into the crates before a gig like that.
Just a quick word before we go back to the interview. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the podcast. I'm Joseph, and this is the HoS Sound Studio. If you enjoy this content, please consider liking and commenting on this very episode, and also following us on the platform where you listen to or you watch the podcast, but also follow us on social media. If you have suggestions of guests that you really would like us to interview, see the link in the description. There's a form where you can submit suggestions for guests, and also if you have questions for them. Once again, thanks so much for watching and listening to the podcast. We love what we do. I hope to see you soon on a dance floor.
Where you said you came from HoS because that was your first type of music. There was electronic.
Yeah.
Was that because also the scene in Locrotondo was more oriented toward the house music?
I mean, of course, I kind of was one of the first alien among other artists, of course, to propose electronic music and techno in a period where Puglia, and I'm just talking about my, of course, age and the time I was exposed to this, of course. I don't want to step into something and like try to be, I was the first, he was the first, she was the first, or whatever. It's more like in the period I grew up, the scene near my place was literally full of like tech house. Minimal was big at a time. There was very little techno and very few parties. So it was kind of like art to get into this sort of like promoters and parties, just because, you know, it's all very small and there is already not enough space for the people who are already bringing that movement. Imagine for somebody's like 15 and try to come and share some like recordings or some like poor demos or something. So in the same time, because I'm not from a big city, what was happening near me was literally most of the things were happening throughout the summer. So you had to wait the whole year until you could basically you could perform or something. Otherwise you just had to get along bar nights and small events like that. But yeah, house music was strong. Like they used to host like legends in my hometown, like I don't know, just to name few, like could be Louis Vega, even Dave Mancuso played there.
Wow.
And like I saw Dave Mancuso sound checking, because that's a funny story actually. My auntie, she's an hairstylist, and she was called to take care of the costumes and the hairs to some of the people who will work and the animations and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just went there because I used to help her and work in the salon. And I go there and I saw this guy just like sound checking, barefoot, drinking Coca-Cola in the middle of the booth. And I was like, who's this person? Like I was so fascinated. I was like, I never seen something like that. And I wasn't even into DJ. I was 13 or something, you know. That was quite crazy, and I didn't know him at all. And now I'm speaking about him, and I wish I knew a little bit more to steal a picture.
Legend, rest in peace.
Yeah, man, like absolute legend. I stayed longer. I couldn't, you know, attend or like stay over midnight for obvious reason. But I remember he was playing like this crazy set, and the booth, the level of the booth, as well as the sound system were super low. He was playing at a very low like level, and he was playing everything from classical music to disco and funk and rare grooves and everything. Quite crazy.
And there's another thing that I think I've heard in a podcast you did with Dustin and Trainwrecks, and also in another interview, which is since you moved to Berlin and in a couple of maybe months later, you wrote something, a poster in your, that probably still is in your room, which is remember why you started. You still have it?
Yeah, I actually now I need to like find it again, because we definitely did some renovation in the flat, but it's basically it stayed in my flat until I had my studio in it.
Yeah.
And then I moved to a new location, and you know, things get just like, you know, when you move you always lose something. Or you find out something.
You find something.
Yeah. But yeah, the poster is still there. Of course, I have it. And the reason why I made it was because I moved here, literally very few connections and very few people that I had. And I was crazy inspired of just like moving to a big cities. I was going to attend clubs and concerts and music shows and art show like almost every day. And I was like, okay, I need to be creative, but at the same time, I shouldn't sort of like forget why am I doing this and what's the purpose and what's my sort of like, I don't want to use the word vision, but something that is, like making me awake in the morning and, follow up with like the same spirit.
Yes. Is that the why? So, for example, you left Local Rotondo, moved to Berlin in 2015.
Yeah.
Like a lot of changes in your life. You need to rebuild your connections, your family, your love. Like you leave a lot of things behind to go and chase your dream. That's the why, right? So you had this dream of creating music, perform music in front of other people. Is that the why for you?
It is, of course, not only that, but it is a big part. And I definitely could say that I was forcing myself. I still do, not to do anything else outside working in music, because I was like, that's the reason why I decided to chase this dream and like move into another city, and I would rather fight and like literally protect myself from everything around me.
Yeah.
For the music. Yeah.
Yeah. The different set of questions from this that you just said, like one is you said fight and protect yourself. Is that, you mean creativity wise, to make sure that you have the energy, creativity to make music?
Yeah, no, of course it must be creativity, because what else? Of course it can be financially an issue, but that doesn't come if you don't have creativity. So creativity must be always the main focus you should have, and also like I never really approach music in a strategical way. Otherwise, I wouldn't be very eclectic like I am today, and like fighting with, I don't know, getting shows because promoters don't know what do I play, or don't have weird expectations or something.
Yeah.
So being creative has always been the main goal, together with also like curiosity. I think being very creative and being a curious person are two of the main reasons why I sort of like still need to think about it every day, so that it's a good reminder.
Yeah, it is. And creativity, curiosity, we'll talk also about your eclecticness, but for your creativity, is there something you do on a weekly basis to make sure that you have creativity, you have inspiration, and is there something you don't do, you avoid, to protect your creativity?
Yeah, I mean, I do have to create something literally every day. Doesn't matter if it's music. It can even be building a shelf. It can be literally like work on design patches for clothes, do something, just like get into a very creative aspect. I'm kind of like a, how to say, I wouldn't call myself like a control freak, but more of like a control fanatic, in the sense that I try to have things in a structural way in my mind, which is only mine, of course. And this helps me to be creative and to always leave space and always leave something that is unfinished, so I know that I can always go back to it and create. So I like to do as many things as possible, so I can wake up with the idea that I have many unfinished things that I need to complete. And that is definitely one of the reasons that, let me be strongly creative every day. But on a musical way, when it comes to protect myself, because we were just mentioning this, it depends. If I'm on a moment or on a period where I'm creating like a new album or a new EP or some new music, to protect myself, I just try not to expose myself into like clubs or other musical environment, because I just don't want any distraction. So a way to protect myself is like, don't hang with artists, don't go to clubs, don't go to concerts, just like don't get anybody who's strongly artsy around you, because that's not gonna help. It's just gonna confuse me. I'd rather do activities that don't belong to art at all.
What's confusing, is it because you start comparing yourself to others?
I think it's not just that. It's good to have self-doubt. It's good. I think it's very it's very normal, and it's also smart.
Yeah.
I think whoever has a very sensitive personality and is smart enough will always question himself and like will doubt about something. I hate when people are like too sure of things, and these are the people I don't trust, you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. And I think it's just important and to sort of like have doubts. But on the other hand, it's not just the fact of being comparing to things, but like being exposed. I like the concept of being very limited when I'm creating something, so I know until where I can push myself. Although it's also like an interesting discussion because there is no limit. We're talking about music and there is no rule, there is no limit. So it's kind of like a wider topic. But in general, I try to put myself limitation, and that's one of them. It's don't try to get like into new inputs
all the time. Yeah.
all the time. Yeah.
Does that happen? So, for example, when you say I try not to hang out with a lot of artists, is this always, or is more when you're creating an album and EP?
Yeah, I think it's just like in periods where I feel, because you will always play show on weekends, you will always be around and surrounded, you will always attend those like vernissage, whether it's art or like dinners where you have other people talking, which is actually magical. Actually, in those moments is where collaborations happens and where you click with some people and you decided like to go to studios together. I'm also like a person who's done a lot of collaboration in music, so it's not really like I'm trying to avoid like connections. Actually, it's the other way around, but I need to limit myself in certain period where I feel like, okay, I need to be just in the studio creating something. Yeah, this goes not only with people, but literally even like not listening to the other record,
Yeah. There was something, I think I knew Jeff Mills was like completely isolated himself from external stimuli. And for many years, I didn't understand, why would you not listen to music to actually open up your perspective? Now I really understand it because of what you're describing, which is sometimes you just need to be looking inwards instead of like receiving more feedback, input, or ideas. You just need to actually get things done from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a journey towards uniqueness, sort of, which we all do have. We all special for something, and we should just like, for some people it takes less time, for some people it takes more time, but I think if you don't read yourself, it's just harder to get to that result.
Was this something you developed over the years, or you had it already new?
I don't know. I think it's kind of like a good question, because I don't think people always think about music and art is something, or creativity actually is something you have to have innate, so it's inside you. I do believe it's something you can chase, and I do believe it's something you as a person can expose yourself and change your lifestyle. Like, you can leave the house with the attitude of being curious, therefore inclined to be a creative person, rather than leave the house and be like, I know where to walk, I know where to take this, and I know this is the best, I know what you're doing is wrong, and so on. So like being curious is part of, it was a very strong part of being creative, and sometimes that helps, as well as being, I don't know, annoyed.
Right, yeah, for sure. It's an attitude to life, and
yeah.
So it seems it's something you matured over time to develop.
I think so. Yeah, I wouldn't say I trained myself to it.
Yeah, you just like matured into it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I wanted to say something about, so your eclecticness, you have two Alices, which are your main projects, Z.I.P.P.O, 3KZ. You have done your production span a lot, from like club-oriented music to more experimental. You have Fides, your label with 2 sub-labels already, so you have a very broad spectrum. Also, your sets tend to be very eclectic. And what is the reason, like we spoke about it before the podcast as well, is what are the downsides of having this approach in the current music world, and what are the things that this thing is really giving you so that you're happy?
From an artistic perspective, it is quite amazing because you're always inspired of new things and you're always exposing yourself with new stuff. And I'm not saying other people don't do, of course everybody does, but in general, if you're recognized for that, then people are coming to attend your show with a bit of a more open-minded, and like they're gonna feel less surprised of you playing some like crazy track, because they know they could sort of like expect you. But from another, let's call it business perspective, it's way more difficult because nowadays promoter want to make sure that you fit in a box and you're ready to share lineups with certain people. And this is kind of like absurd from my point of view, because if you're booking somebody who has a wider knowledge and he's been attending different festivals and lineups, played house and techno and electro or whatever, like, why would you think if you book me between two techno acts, I'm going to go there and play ambient music? It's like, so I think it is something that needs to be stimulated more in your generation of like promoters and clubs. And I hope more clubs will just like open up to have a more variety into lineups and not, always just think about this one-dimensional sort of like shows and party where it's the same sort of music for like 3 days or something. But again, there is also nothing wrong with that, in the sense that there are promoters who embrace eclectic artists and others who are meant to do like just one sort of like musical journey. And this is what we also kind of try to do with Fides, my label. It's like, that's the reason why we have other catalogs, and it's because on Fides main we try to expand this more often, like whether it's electro or techno or like more groovy or less groovy. With the origami series and the tempo series is like very defined. Like origami is for like IDM and ambient, whether tempo series is strictly groovy techno. So I also personally try to do that because I also understood that this will complicate other people lecture, like the label. But from a DJ perspective, I think will be amazing if things could change, but things don't change if we don't change them. So that's what I'm fighting for.
Yeah, for sure. And then and for example, do you have any examples that you've seen of promoters or labels that have done really well? I mean, aside from, of course, your label.
Yeah. I mean, there are some. There are also clubs who do that. There are promoters who started doing festivals in this way, despite doing different floors. Because like, that's easy. Of course, you do the techno floor, you do the house floor, but like, who's really taking the risk of booking like a live act and then an electronic act and then into some ambient, into some techno? I know this sounds terrible for somebody, but actually from my perspective, it sounds more like an interesting show to attend, so I can be feeding within more inputs. But I think that's also it's quite controversial, because I think this is something that people with a more of like a trained ear will like to attend, rather than people who literally want to go experience party in a different way. I think this has to do a lot with like how you want to experience this. At the end, there is not bad or wrong, like, good or bad. It's all about how would you sell it and what's the goal at the end.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen when you were saying there is also the party festival to do that. So for me, immediately the ones that come to mind, the Terraforma, this festival in Milan, they have 2 stages, but normally the stages play at different times.
Yeah.
And you have an alternation between live set. You just have to very different genres. You go from gabber to almost ambient or deep techno or to like more housey. And it's super interesting because I think it attracts a very open-minded crowd, and people react really well to that. From floating for an hour and then next hour they're like jumping around. Super interesting.
Yeah, this festival I've been playing for like 6-7 years. Actually, my hometown was also curated together with Club to Club, which is another Italian festival. They do crazy shows, and I will remember it was interesting. You will go from like Sanfa Live to Arca to Ellenauf and other like different sets, and it was quite amazing to see the crowd shifting and just like changing all the time. And but of course this is a different approach, because we were talking about festivals, and festivals are not only about the music, it's also like the whole experience and the lectures and the things around. Some people are camping there, some people are just like it's just a different way for people to get to know each other. Also, whether in clubs you have a limited space, limited time, and things have to be just like faster to deliver.
Yeah, that's true. I think Open Ground is doing something very interesting. I don't know if you ever
Haven't been yet, but I would love to. Yeah.
Because it's looking from the outside, the lineups are quite diverse. Like in the same night, you have like 3-4 artists, quite diverse in terms of the type of stuff they normally play. I'm very curious whether they kind of like influence each other in a way and they try to have a let's say consistent journey.
Yeah.
Or they just go into, okay, I'm gonna play what I'm known for, even if it's very different from the DJ before and the DJ after. I'm very curious to see how that blends in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always great when you're not showing yourself, you're just like one dimension, you know. I just don't like that, and it's just like get boring over the time, and I would rather just like you know, that goes back to the topic of like being a curious person. You know, it's just like why, you know. And actually funny, I mentioned this in other interview, and I was like, I was seeing this interview from Laurent Garnier. Finally we're speaking about it because we currently we're in touch because we signed up one track from our producer Kang on his upcoming Fabric mix with Fides, and he was in this interview literally saying like, I don't play the same music every day, you know? Like, would you eat chicken every day? Like, that's how we sort of like summarize it. And it's kind of like an interesting way to see it, because I think if you really love music, you don't talk about genres, you don't talk about any of this. You just like want new music to feed you every day, feed your soul, feed your body, feed your mind, you know. So it's something like that's a very I think healthy approach towards new music.
Very difficult commercially, because I think
absolutely, because like it's so many artists, so many labels, and it's not anymore about being good or bad. Almost, it's just like, are you on the right shelf? Then I'm gonna pick you. You know, it's like so you better find a way
to make a way to stand out. But I think also the saturation of music, meaning that there's so much music being pushed out and released every day, that makes things even harder for people to find out what they like, what they don't like. And the genre is kind of a simplification to help people get to what they supposedly like more. But then, of course, the downside is that you create these echo chambers where you get stuck into a genre. Everything else that is marked as something else, you don't like it because it's not your genre.
Yeah. No, it is true. However, lately you can see a lot of more interesting collaboration coming up, whether it's into music, whether it's into art, whether it's into like fashion, or you see some crazy brands collaborating each other and be like, why is this even happening? I think we reached a moment where things are literally pushing things super crazy. So it's sort of like time to probably collaborate again and just try not to just leave it in a very solo and one direction way, because at the end we need one another, you know. So
and fresh ideas. I think also I do feel compared to pre-pandemic, let's say, that also not necessarily line up, but the sets of people, even in the let's call it techno realm, they are getting more and more diverse, and like people take risks, they play stuff that are not necessarily just techno, and people and the audience are much more accepting and responding, and also and that reflects also in the way people produce music. Producers who are very known for something, they also like give a bit of they diversify and then do other stuff, and people are very accepting. I think it's a moment where we're going back to, it's music, I like it, doesn't matter if it's techno or house or something else. It's very positive.
It is, and I like to keep this positivity around me also, because when I join a club or any space, I tend to put it in a way that it's not that they don't like it, it's that they don't know it. So it's our job to sort of like expose other people to music that we like, and with the hope they will like it as well, and they will follow up on your next show and like build a community around you. So it's I don't like when, you know, it's always the new generation is being blamed, and it's always like, oh, they don't know anything, they don't know this. Well, let's just do the work like other people did in the past for us. It's like, really, if we don't inspire them, then nothing's gonna change, you know. It's this is actually, in essence, I think, our job. We don't have other things to do aside of try to expose other people to our little knowledge.
And do you feel free with your art, both production and sets at the moment?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I feel very grateful that it's been some time I started working with Tresor and being a resident of the club, because they're allowing me to experiment and play within the 2 floors and showcases around. And this always puts a new challenge in me, whether it's playing back to back with other artists or playing house or electro or disco in Globus or techno downstairs in Tresor, playing small set, long sets. I think that allowed me to experiment a lot and literally feel free, because that's how I feel every time I play for them, but also like other clubs and other shows around. But that was literally stimulating me a lot, because I'm always into listening to new music. Like I'm forced to listen to new music every day, basically.
Yeah. Do you mean to prepare for the gigs?
Yeah. Basically, to like dig music every day, and whether it's like techno, house, or disco or ambient, I must do, because next show is gonna be different. The next show is gonna be something else. And one day you're opening, one day you're closing. Last year I did this like very long closing. I think I played 9 hours, and I wasn't prepared at all, of course, for that. I'm barely prepared for shows actually, but just to put in my bag as many things as possible and try to know as much as I can all the music that I'm bringing with me, so I can experiment with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I mean, the space, as you said before, you have the residency, you know, consistently you're gonna have the gig every so often, so you actually have the space and you feel safe enough to
Absolutely. This is actually a good point, because you have mentally that safety of being like, okay, I'm gonna be there next time, so I'm gonna take more risk. I'm not gonna defend these sets playing only hits, or like make sure that the crowd is jumping all the time, because I'm here to, you know, sort of like experiment and like feel free. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, that's very true. And talking about safety as well, you touched upon very briefly before, which is like financial safety. Like if you were choosing like yourself to make music the big part of your life, like over time, I know you already do something on the side. Was it always like that when you decided to make music as your core part of your core activity? Did you have another side job? Was that related to music? How do you create financial stability so your art doesn't suffer from that?
Yeah. I mean, I started working very young, whether it was my auntie salon or my brother's shop, which we opened together in the years, but I've always had music being somehow a bigger part of the, let's say, income. And later, when I moved to Berlin, of course, I would suffer a lot, because this was a different step. You go from living with your family in a small town to like a big city where you're alone, and like all the expenses are basically on you. And that was obviously tough times. But I started throughout the pandemic as a joke, sort of, to get inquired for like sound design job, and then I ended up actually opening a company today, and also like work on scoring different short movies, ads, editorials, like things of this kind. Do sound design and sonic branding for other things. So of course that helps, which also puts you in a more safe and chilled environment, because whenever you approach the studio, you will always go for the music you truly like. You wouldn't go for like, oh, what's gonna give me more gigs? What's the label I have to release to get more shows? Like I never really put it in that way, and I never really wanted to explore it, because like at the end, music has to be healing for me. It doesn't have to become an illness. And this is also why I was telling before, sometimes you don't want to hang with a lot of artists or like people who are in the scene, because they're just gonna feed you both very positive but also like very negative thoughts in you. And at the end, we shouldn't just like get too serious when it comes to it, because all we want to do is just like freely make music and experience ourselves. Because like if you make it, it means you have something to say.
Yeah. Tell me more, because like for example, if you make a track, for example, you're saying that, for example, if you didn't have, or for a person that doesn't have financial security, there might be another purpose other than what you want to say.
True. But I mean, at the end, you know, to be honest with you, when I had that sort of like, when I was facing those times, things will be, of course, different, but also the willing to make new music and to change my position will also be stronger. And this is why I was having this conversation. Actually, it's interesting we're talking about this because I was having this conversation with another artist. This was probably like 7 or 8 years ago. His name is Z.I.P.P.O. He's a Dutch artist. Like, I love him. He's an amazing DJ. And he was telling me, actually, I found that the most interesting part of a discography from an artist is actually the beginning of it. It's like, go listen to what artists have released in the early age to understand what's really behind, which can be true sometimes. For other people, they have had an exponential growth, of course. Like, I started making music when I was 15. My first tracks are like really bad, for instance.
Yeah.
I will never recommend people go check my first tracks. You know what I mean?
Please don't.
So everybody's gonna do that now.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting because it was obviously, we were talking about Jeff Mills and he was like, go listen first, Jeff stuff is mind blowing,
Right.
Of course, we're talking about Jeff though, not just like not me, but yeah, it's also like a good point of view to see it, because probably this must be the moment when everybody is just trying to accomplish something with a different point of view and a different approach to it, and also like a different attitude. You're probably still living somewhere else. You probably haven't moved to a city. You probably haven't seen a lot of things, and this is what actually shaped me also, because for me, living in a small town has been always like you painting every day on a white canvas.
Yeah.
Like, it's a blank canvas that you in front of every day.
Yeah.
I'm not exposed to like crazy commercial public transportation. I never lived in a city, so they will put you on a different mindset. I never lived with people around me rushing to go to work or like struggling to like feed the family or something.
Yeah.
Because you're from a very small and nice environment.
Yeah.
In a small town,
And then you also like there's less rules in a way, also in terms of making music, because you're not constantly with every techno DJ who is telling you, oh, techno has to be like this. Yeah,
exactly. And I was one of the few together with other people, so we didn't really know much of what we were doing. We were just like excited to make it and play it in the club next time we'll get the chance. So it's interesting because you just live in a place where you just don't feel the competition, and that's where I sort of like get bored at some point. I was like, okay, I need to go to a place where I'm literally the last, you know what I mean?
Not
like
Italian DJ in Berlin.
Exactly. Like I needed that. I need that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How is your approach to creating music on a weekly basis changed over time? So I don't know if you think about it, Loco Rotondo before 2015, early years in Berlin, today.
It is changed a lot, of course, because sometimes I work from the studio, sometimes I work from home, sometimes I work from friend studios. I do more collaboration. I'm just like actively more involved. Therefore, sessions take longer time than used to be before, because you have more stuff to finalize. Before, it was like very straightforward. It was just like me, my desk, nothing to do, not many friends you want to see. You just like had only music and 2 speakers, and that was it. Nowadays, this has changed a lot, but I do have to say the structure of it is also diverse than before, because now I like to go, for example, to my studio and like record sounds, make my sort of like own library or sample pack, and bring it on and like do arrangements from home, so I can work nighttime, I can work daytime, and then I can go back into my room where I have proper sound treatment and like mix tracks or like experiment with like outboard and all the stuff. So I feel like also because of traveling is a role of this. You need to have a portable studio somehow within you and always being able to like create and like sketch something.
Mm-hmm. Are you a person that produces a lot during traveling? In the box, I guess?
Actually, I tend not to, because I feel like I'm in front of a screen so much throughout the week that whenever I'm traveling or like even if I'm in like hotel rooms or something, I try to do something else, or it's like reading books or like watching movies, or I just try not to work, because otherwise I will always be like going through my records or like going through my record box and try to fix this and change playlists, but that's not gonna take me anywhere. It's just gonna give me more stress actually.
Yeah.
Because at the end you're gonna read the crowd when you go to a club. So
yes, and for your production specifically, do you tend to have specific days and times of the week where you make music?
Yes and no. I have some periods where, like I said, I'm more busy and I'm on projects, and or periods where I have to do more work on the sound design like side. So I'm actually very busy with like music for other purposes, which might put me in a very, I don't know, just a different attitude, and be like, oh, I'm tired of like making music today just because I'm working on something I don't necessarily want it to do, but it's still there. Yeah, but again, I need that, because that let me appreciate even when I go to my studio for 2 hours. You know what I mean? So it's like very important to limit myself for me, so I can embrace and enjoy more those moments. Because when I was completely free, I'll always postpone and procrastinate things. Although I don't tend to, but subconsciously I would. And I'd rather occupy myself a lot and stress a lot to enjoy things, which is kind of like a very weird
paradox.
Yeah.
But I think it's similar to what you were saying about you going to Berlin, more competitive environment. You're just one of the men. You're not the person who's making techno in the city.
Yeah.
I think it kind of creates an incentive for you to then explore, push yourself better. What if you have all the time in the world, you have no commitments, you can just like rest in the studio and say, okay, I'll do this track later. I'm going to watch Netflix or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I hate that. I don't like being just like, I just don't like being lazy in general. So,
for sure.
Yeah, it's not part of my personality. I need to create every day, like we were saying before.
Yeah. One of the things I remember, this must have been, I was still in Rome, and our common friends from Resistance is Techno, they were talking about you. You were just like coming up and becoming, it was maybe even before you were a resident for them.
Mm-hmm.
Must have been 2012.
Yeah.
And they were saying, oh, there's this Z.I.P.P.O, this new guy, he makes music on his laptop, like while we're chatting, like, we're having a conversation, he's making music. I was like, wow, who's this guy, like, so this has been in your blood or in your craft for a while.
Yeah, I mean, when you, I think I grew up in a transitional moment when technology was becoming a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be very fascinated on computers, and I will try to be as skilled as possible to do things. For this reason, music was one of the first tools when I literally stopped playing video games, basically.
He's like, what should I do now?
Exactly. I was like, I'm not interested in video games anymore. I would like to score video games though, but I probably wouldn't be a gamer. And I was still like, okay, this is my game now, and I like it a lot. And again, because when I started, I wasn't doing electronic music. I was into this hip hop and sampling and everything. So all I was doing was like editing things, and what better than a computer with a DAW?
Sure.
Then that, I used MPC, I used all these other sampling devices. But to be honest, the computer will always be the machine that will give me the most freedom and the faster result. At least I think it's just a matter of workflow. There's no
no, for sure. And also your attitude, how you started, it probably plays a big role. If you're used to starting with a computer, you normalize it, it becomes part of your instrument.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also like when people are like, yeah, aren't you ashamed to like play with a laptop or whatever? I'm like, well, if that's how I make music, well, then that's my instrument.
Sure, for sure.
Why should we try to cover that and like show up with like 100 bar loops of your track? If you made them on a computer, just show up with a computer. Like, I actually was very excited to see my first time Sleep Archive live to perform, and just like having him showing up looking like some hacker or something. Just like,
wow, that's it.
That was it, and he was smashing it. So I just loved it, and I was like, well, what's wrong with that, you know? Because like we still to attend shows from experimental artists, whether it's like Alvanotto or Ryoji Keda, to name few. They're performing with computers.
Yeah.
Because they're also part of their workflow, you know. Of course, nobody does entirely things with computers. Me too. But it is part of our workflow. So what's wrong with that?
No, I think there's nothing wrong. I think somehow there is it's like saying vinyl and digital. Like to some extent, people say still vinyl, especially in our realm, like vinyl is a vinyl, digital, you don't give the same attention, and feels like less valuable somehow because it's easier, I think.
I mean, at the end is what you feel more confident with, you know. It's all about the lecture. When I still play hybrid between records and CDJs. Some nights I will play only vinyl, sometimes I will play only digitally, but to be honest, it has a whole different approach.
Yeah.
And it also changed a lot the way you collect things, because when it comes to physical things, you know, you also are limited on space, you're limited on the capacity of your bags and check-in stuff with you and everything. Whether digitally you can bring music for months and not even repeat one track.
Yeah.
You know, so that changes a lot the perspective of you filling up the playlist and like filling up your bag before a show, which is also fascinating. So at the end, there is not bad or wrong, and I wouldn't talk about what sounds better or worst, but it's more about what you feel more confident. Because at the end, whatever you feel more comfortable with, it just becomes an extension of yourself. You know,
sure,
it's your instrument. Yeah, exactly. So,
and do you believe in talent or skills or both?
I believe in discipline, in the sense that when I was playing basketball, I will think a lot of people will never make it. And actually the ones who make it were the ones who performed better and had the right discipline. Whether all the other ones trying to be the phenomena, they just like quit after some times. And I think I wouldn't say artists are comparable to athletes, not at all, of course. Otherwise, we would all quit at 35, you know, from clubs.
Yeah.
But it is important to have a structure within, and so discipline plays a big role. So I think this translates to both talent and skills somehow.
Yeah, I think I agree that the part that, like, talent we don't control. Like if you believe in natural talent, the people that were more gifted than others with an instrument, or they kind of immediately pick up something and create something fruitful to others immediately. Others take a lot of time to develop. I agree. Like, I think the difference is the discipline, like how much consistently you put work to improve, craft, create something unique. And I think over time, I think you come up, like, even if you have a gap compared to someone who's more talented, you can fill the gap by actually practicing.
It's true. I mean, at the end, who's gonna win is always the one person who has more strength and willing to do something.
Yeah.
Whether he's making music in a very rough way or not, it's just because it has this inside and wanting to do something. So you can have extreme talent, but on the other hand, you might be very fragile and person.
Yeah.
So your mind also plays a big role with that.
Yeah.
And discipline is part of it.
Yeah. So you think it's like drivers, like intrinsic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What drives you?
It's a lot of things. What drives me the most is, like I said before, letting a lot of things unfinished around me.
Mm-hmm.
So I can stay creative as much as possible. And I think what is also important is try to not to look what everybody around you is doing, and never look at who's more successful than you.
Yes. Do you have a vision of where you want to be in terms of your craft, in terms of performances, anything else? Or is more, you mentioned something before, I want to score a movie.
Yeah, of course.
Is this a specific project that drives you, or is the image of yourself becoming, I don't know, something?
Yeah, I mean, you know, production, DJing, playing live, scoring, they're all like, they're very close to each other, but they're also like very diverse. So it's like it's almost like they're all different jobs, basically, And of course, everybody who's like into scoring, probably movies are the main, the main thing. I would love to do that. I would love to, bring the label at a pace where people can understand how inclusive we are in terms of like sound. And I think I would love to bring that idea of like literally running a label as it used to be a while ago, rather than be one sound, one character, one dimension. Yeah.
So there's like, it feels like projects and ideas.
Yeah, I would love to release bands. I would love to release music that's actually eventually gonna get scored into movies. You know what I mean? So yeah. Well, I would love to combine all this stuff together.
Yeah, I'm sure, definitely you can. I'm sure that if you want to, or you apply yourself, you manage very well to do that.
Yeah, it takes some time.
Yeah,
It takes time, but it's yeah. I still feel like I have the energy to do that. So until then, I will go ahead.
For sure. Are you patient? Like
Oh, very much. Yeah. I consider myself a very patient person. Otherwise, I would have probably quit already, But no, for sure, I am, and I have also like, quite of a strong mindset. When I do sort of like believe in something, I try to make everybody else around me to prove me right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's part of the attitude I have, I guess.
Yeah. If you think about your challenges in the last 15 years, let's say, what have been one or two of the biggest challenges or challenging moments that you faced?
Being able to play like my own style on stages where people book me thinking I wouldn't surprise them with this music, for sure. But on the other hand, I had a lot of challenging moments in terms of not only the musical like aspects, but more about situation that happened around me, whether it was like a set of mine that would extend of more hours, or something that would happen. Like, I don't know, when I played Boiler Room, I was asked to play like a house set, which I did, and I was super happy about it. But then when I got there, they told me I couldn't play records, and I just came with records, so I had no other support or something, So these are like all these challenging moments that still manage to like help and resonate. But it's interesting because we often just do those things and we never tend to speak about it. So I think the challenge is every day around us, So every day there is a new one, whether it's like fighting the new trend nobody likes but is up there, or like that gig was supposed to be a great show and surprise you with like crazy conditions or things like that. So yeah.
If you could give an advice to a good friend who is thinking to have a similar path to yours and make music, DJ, but it's just starting off and is struggling to get recognition and starting to get like traction, people don't listen to their music, what would you recommend them?
Definitely to be surrounded of enough old people around them, as well as very young people, because like what I can see is like when I was growing up, I think all the people older than me will be very helpful, almost mentors to me, but on the other hand will also get into very like outdated and old-fashioned conversation, which wouldn't help a young kid to dream, you know what I mean? So it needs to be a balance in between the two. And I think the people you surround yourself with are very important in the, like, let's so call it career or attempt to be in an artistic environment.
Yeah. Do you have, or did you have mentors or role models that you aspire to?
Yes and no. I definitely had one of my best friend who's not with us anymore, but I always love to remind him because like he was a promoter actually in my area, and he was the first person who literally believed in me and pushed me to do music, and he later sort of like became my agent, but just because we started getting requests and he was happy to handle things for me. I was still underage, and he had to help me on a lot of stuff. So he's been some sort of like role model in the sense that the way he would curate things and the passion and the how detail oriented it was sort of like helped me to understand what can be positive structure when you're approaching music and clubs and all these environments.
So it give you support completely, but also help you with the mindset.
I think it was support, but more specifically like the mindset. Because at the end, you know, when you're an artist, when you make music, you just want to express your ideas. You don't want anybody else to tell you what to do and how to change things. I mean, you accept feedbacks, but on the other hand, you also want to go your way. Because like we all know there's not bad or good, and it's all about experimenting. And like most of the coolest stuff happen out of crazy happy accidents or things like that. So, yeah.
What's do you have any advice that you are super tired of hearing? It's been added too much or bullshit.
Oh yeah, of course. Like when people say, "Be yourself," I'm like, that means nothing. Like being yourself is putting people in the most comfortable way, and if you don't leave the comfort zone, you're not gonna achieve anything. You're not gonna make anything extraordinary. You're not gonna make anything new. So you shouldn't really be yourself. You should like perhaps like listen yourself and read into yourself, whether it's like be yourself. Because like if you tell, you know, somebody to be them, you know, be yourself, then I don't think it's healthy to drink and eat the same food every day.
Yeah.
You know, so that goes with the approach towards music or anything. If you think being yourself is working alone on music, probably that's going to help, because collaborating with other people, it's also going to unlock new things for you.
Yeah.
So it is very common actually to hear that, you know. It's
yourself, just be yourself, like don't push yourself.
I think it just puts you too comfy.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a definition of success? What that means for you?
I don't know. I mean, I never really approached like this because of success, to be honest. And I would never really wake up with this idea of like, oh, I want to be successful. I want to be somebody. I think like I would rather wake up and be like, I want to say something, you know, and just like, and I hope some people resonate with it. I think this is what keeps me motivated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you want to say?
Because I don't know. I think I said a lot.
When you think about your discography, or maybe let's put it this way, is there any track that you have released that you feel particularly connected because that helped you say something in that specific moment?
Yeah, there is this one track from time to time pops up, or like some people charts it. It's like it's an old track. It's called In Constant Universe. It's on Fides. I think one of the first releases, like the 4th or the 5th. And this track is super basic. I was limiting myself to do it within like 5 or 6 channels. So like one chord progression, one kick drum, one bass, one pad, one noise effects, and that was it. I think just like 4 or 5 elements. And it somehow also became a bit more known and successful. And I'm kind of proud of that, because I always try to be as minimalistic as something and resonate with other people. I think this is the hardest we can do. Like whenever you're able to communicate a big sentence with very few words is where you feel very powerful, actually. And that's how I felt when I made this track. I was like, wow, I think I love this and I would love to do more in this style, but it's hardly coming up that way. Yeah.
It's very hard to actually reach that point.
Yeah, to be simple is the hardest thing, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for someone who is making music, how would you recommend that they practice, learn, approach sending their message to music?
Yeah, I think it's important to don't limit yourself to experiment. Don't put yourself in a way that you think you already know the music that you like and that you want to produce, because most of the time that's not going to be true. You have to do as many things as possible until you really find out what you like, especially if you're attempting to approach music in a very easy and chilled way, and actually a very passionate way. I still don't know if techno is going to be the main genre I want to produce. You know what I mean? It's like I'm always on the look for new stuff, and I'm always experimenting. And then with the sound design career, that helps me also like to leave the comfort zone and do something else. And when I have to do something else, because it's a commission work, for instance, I have the time to learn something new, because I have to work on something I haven't done before. And maybe if I like it, I'm gonna bring it back into my sound, into electronic music. So I think it's important to do a lot of things that you like, but also do a lot of things that you don't like, to really see what is that you like the most. So
Explore.
yeah, for sure. It's all about curiosity. We always go back to that topic. Yeah.
Very important to keep an open mind also in terms of beliefs. And there's a question that I love to ask and understand people answer, which is, what is something you have changed your mind on in recent time? Could be a belief, an idea, something you thought something before you had a belief and then it changed.
What changed into my mind is a lot, was that you are not the person who's gonna define you are the artist, in the sense that you can live as an artist, in the sense that that's how you want to approach the world, but you can't be the person defining yourself. You are an artist, because I think this takes your whole life. And you know, when you're young, you think this is like, being an artist is just a way to call somebody who's a creative person. But actually, I think it's just a bigger word until you can really call yourself you are an artist. Yeah. So I think that changed my mind, because at the beginning I was like, I will use it as a word to speak. Yeah, I'm an artist. I'm like, stop saying that.
Yeah.
You're not.
When you meet someone new, what do you say? They ask you the classic question, what do you do?
Oh, man. I want to be funny now, to be honest. I'm a chocolate sommelier. That's what I am. I taste all type of chocolates every day.
I eat pizza.
Exactly. No, I don't know, man. It's like, it's interesting. It's kind of like difficult times. Used to be really cool. It's like, it's funny because it used to be really cool to say, you know, I'm a DJ. Actually, today people confuse this a lot.
But so, I mean, it's also Berlin in our bubble. You know, every third person is a DJ.
Yeah, exactly. That's fine. That's fine.
Interesting.
That's why I feel like I don't know.
Yeah.
So I work in music. That's what I say.
That's it.
I try to work with music. Yeah.
It's I think it also like keeps things fresh.
Yeah. No, of course. And you always like, you always leave that sense of to the other person in front of you. You always leave that sense of like being somebody who's inclined to creativity within the music, and that you're able to do more and read more into the music.
Yeah. And talking about the current music scene, what has been one of the most uncomfortable truths that you have to learn and cope with?
I don't know. I think it's a tough question, actually. But I mean, I'm always very positive, you know, like I try to go there, play my show, go back, try to, you know, like put myself as more comfortable and as I can, and approach the crowd and the booth in a very simple way. But it's hard to say, because it can be very different, and it can be a lot, whether it's the club environment has its own, the festivals has its own, you know, like it's changing a lot. One of the things I sort of like dislike, or probably I like the less, is maybe the fact that we have to invest a lot of time and energy into a lot of things that are not related to music, and that it's very time consuming and stressful if you just want to be creative and work in the studio every day. But again,
social media, for example.
Social media can be part of it, but you know, it's like, when I explain people what I do, most of them think I work on the weekends and that's it, you know, which is like super funny. But like nowadays we have to be many things. We have to do that. For those who have a label, you have to do the label. You have to have relation with artists. You have to take care of updating all your new press packs and press kits, and you have to be your accountant. You have to be many things, and you only have 7 days. You know, it's quite a lot. So yeah, I would really love to just like make music, but I know this is very difficult. Yeah. So that's probably the thing I dislike a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, not the fact that I'm not only doing music every day.
Do you, and also, I mean, you need to factor that in, that also the health, your private life, meaning a private life as relationships. How do you make sure that you cultivate healthy relationships with friends, with lovers? You have a partner for now a long time.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you, when you're with them, you are there, present?
Yeah. It is tough in the sense that, especially with my friends, because I mean, with my partner, we live together, so things can align, let's say, easier, although we are both very busy, for instance. And that sometimes is also not easy and helpful, because sometimes we are too busy and we don't even see each other within our apartment, But what I suffer the most is actually like friends and family sometimes, because you will most likely are not going to be the one attending that friend birthday or that particular circumstance, and life just goes on, and you just like grow up, and at some point, all the best memories you always have within these environments, not only when you play in front of like 20,000 people. So I just like feel that's something I miss sometimes, and I would love to spend some of this quality time more often. But on the other hand, whenever I have the chance, I try to spend one extra day in cities where I'm playing, if I have more friends or family around, or whenever my partner she can take some time off and travel with me, or the other way around. So it is, again, going to support each other. And if you support each other, at the end, you will always find the balance.
Yeah, it's good to work together and communicate. But of course, as you said before, like uncomfortable truth is that time is what it is, energy is what it is. You need to sometimes miss on something.
Yeah, because you always, you're most likely gonna work on those days when everybody's having fun. It's sort of like, I mean, you are also having fun. Don't get me wrong. We are not doing such a terrible job after all, but it's just like you could be with your friends for New Year's Eve doing something, whether you're gonna be in the airport by midnight, just like sending people texts like, yo, Happy New Year,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, the big outside.
Exactly. Sure.
Yeah. And we're going toward the wrap up and the last questions. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Feel free to answer as fast as you want. If you were not a musician, what would you do?
Hairstylist.
Hairstylist.
Yeah, because all my friends, all my family. Yeah, like 3 of them. Yeah. All my uncle, my aunties and my uncle. Yeah.
Yeah. So you would be like following the family?
Probably.
That's it.
Probably.
Yeah. What's one thing that you love and nobody ever asks you about outside of music in your main career?
I do like watching specific like documentaries or like movies of this kind, and I wish there would be more time to speak about this, because every time, especially when you're like surrounded with artists or other people in music, you always end up talking about music, and I would love to talk more about, I don't know, like movies and actors and directors, or things like that. I like movies, and I wish I would have more time to talk about this.
Watch and talk about it.
Yeah, or like watch movies together or something, Everybody just want to go for drinks and cigarettes. Like,
we talk more about movies. If you were to choose a closing track for the rest of your life, for all your gigs, what would that be?
I like this Larry Hare track, The Sun Can't Compare. Is one of my favorite, actually. When we played together, I asked him to sign a copy, and I asked him to sign on the walks of the record. So actually, I can't play that record anymore because it's like literally just like signed on it. And he was also surprised. He was like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "I got 2 copies. Like, no worries." But I want him to be on it. Yeah, that's that big time closing track.
Beautiful track, like quite old, but like I remember it's like nice. There's also a housey remix. It's pretty.
I love it. Yeah,
great track. What is a guilty pleasure track of yours that you would never play in a set?
I do play my guilty pleasure tracks in sets. Mm-hmm. Like, to be honest, I played Doors. I played Madonna. I played a lot of tracks. So I would say I like Into the Groove from Madonna is one of those tracks. It's one of my guilty pleasure tracks. I tend to like unfold sometimes.
Very nice. Would you rather play in front of 10,000 people, big stadium, you have no chance to meet any of them after, but you can just play in massive stadium, adrenalinic, huge feeling, or 20 close friends in a house party?
10,000 friends.
Yeah. 10,000 close friends.
No, I don't know. I always like when my friends are around, to be honest.
Yeah.
It always makes things way more special. So for sure I'll go for friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big time. We can play here now. I'm down.
Yeah. And if you, let's say you get stuck for a week on a deserted island, but you can take with you, you can choose to materialize any artist, musician or not, dead or alive, to spend a week with you while you're trying to survive, who would that be?
You better be good at fishing. I don't know, in the sense that I don't know if I want an artist like or a DJ or something. I don't want to talk about Ableton on a desert island like the whole time.
It's also useless.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know. Only one? I don't know.
It could be another musician or another artist of any kind.
Oh yeah, of course. Then I will go for like Mark Rothko, like a painter, or even, I don't know, it would be amazing to have, I mean, the biggest dream will be having one painter, like one artist, and one scientist, actually. Like that would be amazing to hang with the old good homie Rothko and Isaac Newton or something on an island. It's just gonna be super interesting.
It's super interesting. Maybe at the end of the week you're like, oh, I think I'm gonna stay, if I can stay with these two, why not?
Yeah.
Do you have any projects that are coming up that are close to you that you feel excited about?
For sure. Fides is turning 10 years in 2025. So we're working on a big compilation I'm curating. There will be more exciting music coming. I'm gonna put as much as I can, all the effort in it. There will be a new release on SK from me. There will be a new release. I don't know if I can talk about this, but let's do it. I don't care. So I'm gonna release on Mistress. Devious One label is gonna reopen, and with my EP. So that's going to be an exciting news in 2025, and I think it's going to be a nice year full of new stuff. And of course, the Resident with Tresor will always continue, and Polyphonic Festival and other acts. So yeah.
Congratulations, a lot of stuff, and I'm looking forward to the releases as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And last question, closing tradition, what's a question that we should ask the next guest without knowing who they're going to be?
I would like to ask somebody next, what is your approach towards being unique when you make art? Whether it's music, whether it's photography or anything that is creative. Because I think this is what makes things very complicated. Like looking into uniqueness and try to have something very special.
There's a question for you, which is, how do you cope with putting art out in a specific project that doesn't get any resonance, even if it's very connecting for you? Like something you really like. Let's say you make a track, you love it, super emotionally connected, you put it out, nobody eats a shit. How do you cope with that?
Interesting. We're talking about this because I had this, I think, on another interview, and what I tend to say is I don't have bad feelings with that, just because whenever I release something, I detached totally from it. So to be honest, I'm just like, it's out, so it's not mine anymore. It has no value to me almost anymore. Of course it does, but it's different, The piece is out, so until I keep it, it's actually mine, and I can sort of like drive it differently. I still have, it's still in my hands. Whenever it's out, it's everybody's piece. So it's kind of like, I probably don't even have all the records I've released also at home. Sometimes I just forget where they are or something. It's just like, it's out. It's for everybody, and it's for everybody to hopefully enjoy. But it
gains its own life.
Basically. So I think that is part of the discipline and being within this attitude of looking and judging whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Z.I.P.P.O, has been a pleasure to have you here. And
Likewise.
talk about a lot of things like from your approach to making music and your life. Super nice.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you next time. Very nice.